This episode is for the ladies. So previously I went through the different parts of a woman's cycle and recognizing that we should have different diet, different lifestyle, different exercise to optimize our health according to those different parts of the cycle. So on this episode, I'm going to get a little more detailed about the different parts of the cycle and what you need to do in a very general term about what you need to do in regards to your diet, your exercise, and lifestyle according to your cycle. Sorry, gentlemen. We'll get to you next time. So right off the bat, let's start with a review of the different parts of the cycle. First part of the cycle, day 1, is when we have our menstrual cycle. That usually is from day 1 to day 7. Going into our second part of the cycle, which is our Yin cycle. This is when our body is starting to produce more estrogen. Our ovaries are building, preparing for ovulation. The estradiol will continue to raise until the luteinizing hormone goes up and our estrogen drops and we ovulate, which brings us to ovulation. The third part is our Yang phase. This is when progesterone starts to kick in. Once we've ovulated right there from that follicle, the corpus luteum will continue to produce progesterone and that will increase unless we find that there is a fertilized egg, and then that will implant, and then that will start to really increase, triple, and we will go towards pregnancy. If not, our body then will build up until it recognizes that there is not a fertilized egg and that it is time to now schlep off our uterine lining. But before we do that, we have the 7 days post-ovulation. That's our Yang cycle, our progesterone time. And then we have the final section, which is our Qi phase. And that is as the progesterone's building and we're coming to a denouement. And finally, we will recognize that there is not a pregnancy and we will have a drop in our progesterone and we will shed our lining, starting us back to day 1. In our menstrual cycle. All of that should, in a healthy cycle, be around 28 days. 28 to 32 is still normal. Before that, less than that becomes a little abnormal, a little too short. And anything longer than that is also considered not optimal, and it would be too long. So starting from day 1 to day 7 is our blood cycle. And this is when we have our menstrual cycle. It is important to recognize, again, there is no general for every human being because we're all a little bit different. So we always have to take into account what's happening during that cycle. If during that cycle, during day 1 to day 7, your bleeding is bright red, a decent flow, you bleed for maybe 4 or 5 days, and that feels good, no clots, that is ideal, that's optimal. If it is not having any pain before, during, or after, that is optimal. If you are having pain before, then we are having some Qi backup, which is the previous phase, and we'll work on that later on. If you're having pain during the cycle and you're having clots and you're having discomfort, that means that there's a little bit of blood stagnation. So during that time, if you have that, that is not optimal. You would want to see your acupuncturist because there are quick and easy ways, honestly, to get that blood moving, and you'll see results within a month or two, most likely. And using herbs can also help with this. And that is key, that the herbs are always an option. And definitely during our bleeding, it tells us a lot of information about how we are health-wise. We are lucky as women that we can see that. We don't have that with men every month, but with women every month, we can see what's happening in our bodies. And if our blood is dark, purple, or clotted, then we are not getting enough good circulation of blood, and that is going to cause problems. If it is really pale and we're not having enough bleeding, we only bleed for 2 days, something like that, and it's very light, that tells us that we are a little bit of blood deficient. And that means that it might even parallel anemia, i.e. an iron deficiency, a B12 deficiency, a folate deficiency. With that being said, we have to increase our folate and our B vitamins and our iron. And that means in most cases, meat, red meat. I know a lot of people feel very uncomfortable in our country about that, and understandably so. A lot of our meat is tampered with. It is full of hormones. It's high in cortisol, and this does hormone deregulation. So if we are going to do meat, which traditionally is necessary and actually good to eat, especially at this time in our cycle, we have to make sure we're getting it very clean and doing our very best to try to get organic foods that have no hormones and are free range. And this is where we would do that in moderation. When I say moderation, we're not talking every day. We are talking about maybe once or twice a week. And if you have any homocysteine levels that are high, which is something that you'd want to check, you might find that you have maybe a little methylated folate issue. And if that's the case, then you might want to be doing more bone broths than doing the actual meat in order to get the benefits of that. There are also supplementation. Obviously, you can always do supplements. But I always will say that anything you can get from the earth is going to be easier to metabolize on the whole. But it is a good idea to find a good supplement company that is a nutraceutical company. You can check with your acupuncturist about that to make sure that you are getting clean supplements, because again, in our country, it's not regulated in regards to what is in those supplements. Some of them have lots of filler in them. They don't always have what they say is in them. So we want to make sure we do that. So that is on the first phase. So if you have a lighter flow, that tells you that. If you have a clotted flow, then that's stagnation. And if you are bleeding for longer, 8 or 9 days, that is not optimal. And you would want to see your acupuncturist about that. There are herbs to help you stop bleeding, believe it or not, very progesterone-like. And there are acupuncture treatments for that. So ideally, if you are having a healthy flow, this is a time that if you ever read the book, The Red Tent, it would be talking to you about the fact that you don't want to be doing any extreme activity exercises at this time. This doesn't always work out for everybody, obviously. You are going to do what you're going to do. But in a perfect world, this is where you're going to be doing more blood building, more slower process, more breathing techniques, more Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, vinyasa flow, these kind of exercises more than rigorous exercise. If you have blood stasis, blood stagnation, i.e. blood clots and pain during this cycle, I do tell you to do some movement. Then you are going to do a little cardio. You are going to get a little bit of exercise. You are going to want to break a sweat, and you are going to get more rotation. You want to be more twisting movements to get things moving around the liver area, which is right underneath the rib cage, the hypochondria area in that time. So that moves us to our second phase, which is our yin cycle. And the yin cycle is when our estrogen in our estradiol is starting to really build and increase. Ideally, we should be ovulating around day 14. Some people ovulate between 14, 16, 18. It's still normal. We rather be later than earlier if you're looking to be fertile. You should have a change of that cervical mucus. So if you don't have that, then we might need to increase estrogen at this time. So this depends on the person. If you are estrogen dominant, if you have trouble ovulating, you're not ovulating, or maybe you're overweight, you might want to talk to your acupuncturist about this, because there are herbs to help with this and dietary recommendations and supplements as well to help you get back into more of a normal, ideal pattern for this time. From days 7 to 14, this is when we are eating estrogenic foods, phytoestrogens. There's phytoestrogens and then there's xenoestrogens. So phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens, these are your chickpeas and your edamame and your peas. Those are the foods that you would technically want to eat. Obviously, everything needs to be clean and organic. We don't want anything that is GMO'd, ideally, if we can, and nothing that has been filled with any kind of hormones. Don't let this be confused with xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens, X-E-N, xenoestrogens are from external processed environmental factors that act estrogen-like once they're ingested. These are things that are parabens and phthalates, things that are in our skincare, our hair products. These are things that are in our environment when it comes to pesticides, preservatives, things that are going to hormonally deregulate the system. Those interfere. They are estrogen-like in the body. They don't metabolize, though, like a phytoestrogen would. And those are ones that do cause a lot of havoc on the system and throw off that gentle balance between the estrogen and progesterone. Those are what we want to eliminate in our life, and those are the ones that you want to avoid. We can have another conversation on that later. And then we have foods that are helping you process that estrogen. So there's things that have DIM in it, such as your cruciferous vegetables. For example, your broccoli, your cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. These are all foods that are cruciferous vegetables that have DIM in them, which is something that helps you metabolize estrogen. So this is a good time to dump that extra estrogen into the bloodstream. Then when it comes to exercise, again, we are building yin. These are cultivating exercises. This is Tai Chi, Qigong, Vinyasa flow, doing swimming, for example, breathing techniques, dancing if it's something that is luxurious and beautiful and slow, gently moving the chi as we lead into ovulation. If you have any early ovulation, this could be related to either not enough estrogen, or we would also call it heart heat, where if you're having lots of vivid dreams and anxiety, sometimes this can lead to an early ovulation. See your acupuncturist about this. There are definitely Chinese herbs that can be really useful and helpful to build that yin before your ovulation. Then once you are getting to that ovulation, there's going to be some gentle cardio here. Gentle movement. We need exercise, a little bit of massage here, something to move liver chi, move a little bit of stress. Make sure that switch from the estradiol to the luteinizing hormone going up and the ovulation occurring. That is a big switch. So doing nice little gentle cardio, walking, swimming, dancing are going to lend itself to a nice smooth transition. Massage as well. Lymphatic drainage is really good here too. So yin cycle happens till day 14. Then after day 14 or after you ovulate, you're going to have 7 days post, and that is your yang phase. And that relates to your progesterone. Once you've ovulated and that corpus luteum is supporting that progesterone output, now you're going to feel that you need to warm the body. Progesterone in Chinese medicine really kind of parallels yang, which is what warms the body. It supports health. You want to have warm feet and warm lower back, and foods are going to definitely want to be warmer here. There are foods that are more yang in nature, more progesterone-like. So if you're able to do any kind of seafood, things like that, or things that are shellfish related, this is where we want to make sure we have our vitamin D support. And Chinese herbs are really the greatest thing that I know, and adaptogens do support adrenal health. This is where we're doing more strengthening, more bone strengthening, more muscle strengthening. We want to be doing Ashtanga yoga. We want to be doing weightlifting, weight bearing. Obviously nothing too extreme ideally, but this is where you would do more of that. I would say for some people, a little cardio is always good every day for sure, but you're going to notice a little increase around ovulation and also right before your cycle. In this time, we'll be focusing more on that warming nature and that strengthening and that building nature. And then that's ideally from day 14 to day 21. Implantation we would hope to happen around day 21. It could sometimes be a day early or a day late, and ideally the progesterone will then go up and our protocol will be different, but we'll, for this sake, continue on that we're not getting pregnant, and at this point now we're going to be building our progesterone, but our body's going to recognize that there is not a pregnancy that's viable, and we will have our chi phase. And the chi phase is the last phase, and that's from day 21 to 28. And from there, you're going to have movement. So this is where oftentimes people feel bloated and people have anxiety or people have irritability, you have hormonal outbreaks. Partially here because this is the liver really needing a lot of help in order for it to transition this major shift from the progesterone dropping and then the menstrual cycle starting. So we need to give it all the love we can. And that means that we need movement and we need a lot of clean foods that help the liver. A lot of foods that help the liver are green in nature. When you hear about foods that help with blood pressure, this is usually helpful. Celeries and cucumbers and things that are green and warm. But we want to really focus on movement and also recognizing that what we eat before bed is really important. We don't eat too close to sleep. I think most people are aware that's best for you, but really why is because in Chinese medicine, the liver time is from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. And if we're eating things that are not helpful to the liver, like processed foods and processed fats, we want good healthy fats. That's another good thing to focus on for the diet. Our good healthy fats are salmon and avocado and chia seeds and flax seeds, because the liver needs fat and hormones are fat. They're based on fat. So just as much as we need proteins and all the plant-based foods, we really want to get healthy, good fats to help these hormones transition, especially when it comes to the yin leading into ovulation, as well as the qi cycle to help move and transition into our menstrual cycle. So this is where we're doing our cardio, twisting. This is where we're moving, breaking a sweat. This is where we're focusing on good foods to clean out our liver and help our liver. And breath work is always a good thing. And yeah, we got to laugh a little bit, have some fun. And that is the general for all of these parts of the cycle, all of which they have herbs that correlate. And if you need a little extra support, if the food's not working and these gentle exercises aren't working and things are not aligning in the ideal optimal way, then you want to see your acupuncturist, because something about those needles and the way that they get us out of that fight or flight response will definitely smooth out those transitions for the qi phase and for the ovulation phase. And so that's all we have for today. I hope that helps. The information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your health, medical treatment, or medication. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any medical institution.